You can wait outside. The words hung in the conference hall as everyone turned to stare at me. My fingers tightened around my presentation folder, the one containing 6 months of research that had saved the company millions. "Excuse me?" I managed, my voice barely audible over the clinking of champagne glasses. Jadida, our marketing director, gestured dismissively. "We're at capacity for the ceremony. You understand." I glanced around the spacious room. Every colleague from my department sat comfortably at tables draped in cream linen. Even Jade, the intern who'd been with us for exactly 3 weeks, the same intern who'd somehow presented my supply chain algorithm as her own during last month's board meeting. "Why would we waste a seat on you?" Jadida added with a thin smile. "You're just an analyst." That moment crystallized everything. The missed promotions, the stolen ideas, the endless hours. My gaze shifted to the projection screen announcing the Innovation Excellence Award that should have had my name on it. "I see," I said, calmly opening my laptop. "Check your email." Moments later, as notification sounds echoed through the hall, I walked out, closing the door on their suddenly panicked voices. Before I continue with what happened next, could you take a moment to imagine standing in those shoes? That feeling when years of your work is dismissed while someone else gets the credit. If you've ever been underestimated or overlooked, you'll understand why what I did next changed everything. Stay with me, because this revenge was 3 years in the making, and the ending will show you exactly why patience is more than a virtue. It's a weapon. My name is Cassie Vance, and until that day, I was the senior data analyst at one of the country's fastest growing logistics companies. I have an eidetic memory and a talent for finding patterns in chaos, skills that made me exceptional at my job but terrible at office politics. I'm the person who speaks directly and works late, who thinks solving problems matters more than who gets credit for solving them. I was wrong. I grew up in a small town where my father ran the local library and my mother taught mathematics. They raised me to believe that merit would always rise to the top, another thing they were wrong about. When I joined the company after completing my dual master's degrees, I believed I'd found my perfect match, a place where innovation and efficiency were supposedly valued above all else. My first year went exactly as I'd hoped. I created an inventory tracking system that reduced errors by 37%. I developed predictive models that helped our clients optimize their shipping routes. I even discovered a critical flaw in our flagship software that could have cost us our biggest client. Each time I presented my findings through proper channels, following company protocol to the letter. The trouble began during my second year, when Marcus was hired as our new department head. He arrived with a reputation for turning struggling divisions into success stories. What nobody mentioned was his method, taking credit for his team's achievements while deflecting responsibility for failures. The first time it happened, I thought it was a misunderstanding. I'd developed an algorithm that predicted shipping delays based on weather patterns and port congestion. After presenting it to Marcus in a private meeting, I was surprised to find him showcasing it to executive leadership 2 weeks later, with no mention of my contribution. "Great work on the predictive model," I said afterward, thinking perhaps he'd simply forgotten to credit me. Marcus gave me a blank stare. The conceptual framework was mine. "You just helped with some numbers." I was stunned into silence. The entire framework from conception to execution had been mine, but as a still new employee eager to prove myself as a team player, I let it go. That was my first mistake. Over the next several months, a pattern emerged. I would identify a problem, develop a solution, share it with Marcus, and watch as he presented it as his own insight. When I finally gathered the courage to address it with Sandra in Human Resources, her response left me cold. "Do you have documentation that these were exclusively your ideas?" she asked, not looking up from her computer. "I have the original files with my creation dates," I replied. "But did you develop these during work hours using company resources?" "Well, yes, but..." "Then they belong to the company, not to you personally. Marcus is your supervisor. If he presents departmental achievements to leadership, that's appropriate chain of command." I left her office understanding the unwritten rules. Ideas flowed upward. Credit rarely flowed down. I might have continued in this frustrating but tolerable situation if not for what happened 6 months ago. After noticing inefficiencies in our cross-continental shipping routes, I spent weekends developing a comprehensive solution, a new logistics framework that would revolutionize our entire approach. The potential savings for our clients were enormous. 27% reduction in costs, 42% improvement in delivery times. I prepared a detailed presentation, practicing late into the night before the quarterly strategy meeting. But when I arrived, Marcus intercepted me at the door. "Leadership has a tight agenda today. We need to streamline," he said. "Give me your materials. I'll incorporate the key points into my overview." Reluctantly, I handed over my presentation folder. I sat through the 3-hour meeting, waiting for my portion, only to watch Marcus rush through a 2-minute summary that missed all the crucial innovations. The initiative was shelved for further review. 2 weeks later, Jade joined our team as an intern. Ivy League educated, and the niece of our company's CEO, she was immediately included in meetings I had been excluded from. 3 weeks after that, she presented her new logistics framework to the executive team. My framework, with superficial changes and a new name, the initiative was immediately greenlit. Jade received a permanent position and became the rising star of our department. When I approached Marcus, his response was brutal in its casualness. Jade's approach incorporated senior leadership priorities that your version lacked. This is business, Cassie. Results matter more than who came up with what first. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by 3 years of work. Innovations that had made millions for the company while my salary remained stagnant and my career stalled. Something shifted inside me. If results mattered more than people, I would show them exactly what that philosophy would cost them. I began working on a new project, one I never mentioned at the office, never accessed on company devices, and never developed during business hours. I enhanced my original logistics framework, identifying weaknesses and incorporating solutions that would make the version they'd stolen look primitive by comparison. But this was just the beginning. I started cataloging every instance where my work had been appropriated, creating a detailed record with timestamps, original files, and witness accounts from colleagues who had seen the pattern but remained silent. I scheduled coffee meetings with former employees who had left under similar circumstances, gathering perspectives and building connections. I discovered I wasn't alone. Priya from product development had left after her patent-worthy innovation was claimed by her manager. Dante from client relations resigned when his strategy for retaining our largest account was presented by the VP without attribution. Each conversation revealed a company culture that systematically exploited its most innovative employees while rewarding those who excelled at internal politics. More importantly, these conversations built me a network of talented, undervalued professionals who recognized the same toxic patterns. People who, like me, had continued creating and innovating despite the lack of recognition, because that's who we fundamentally were. 3 months before the awards ceremony, I approached Ruth Mercer, a venture capitalist known for funding startups that disrupted established industries. I presented my enhanced logistics framework along with a comprehensive business plan. This could transform the entire sector, she said after reviewing my materials. But why leave a secure position to start from scratch? Competition in this space is brutal. Because I'm not starting from scratch, I replied, revealing my second presentation. Profiles of 7 industry veterans, including Priya and Dante, who had committed to joining my venture if it secured funding. Gail's expression changed. Now that's interesting. And your former employer will likely continue taking credit for innovations they didn't create until they realize those innovations have stopped coming. 2 weeks later, I had a funding commitment. 1 month after that, I had office space leased under a holding company name and legal agreements with my future team members. I secured preliminary patents for my enhanced framework and reached out to clients who had expressed frustration with my current employer's inflexibility. Through careful networking, I identified 5 major clients who were considering moving their business elsewhere. I arranged discrete meetings, presented my solution, and secured tentative agreements contingent on my company's launch. Everything was in place. I just needed the right moment to make my move. The quarterly award ceremony provided the perfect opportunity. After learning that Jade would be receiving the Innovation Excellence Award for her logistics framework, I prepared my final act. I drafted resignation letters for myself and my 7 colleagues, finalized client transfer agreements, and prepared a press release announcing our new venture. That morning, I dressed with particular care, selecting a deep blue dress that projected confidence without ostentation. I arrived early, clutching my presentation folder, not because I expected to present, but because I wanted them to see me holding it one last time. I stood at the entrance of the grand conference hall, watching as colleagues filed in and found their assigned seats. I saw Marcus guiding Jade to a prime position near the executive table. I noticed Jadeda, the marketing director who had always treated operations staff as beneath her notice, checking the seating arrangements. When she spotted me, her expression shifted from surprise to irritation. That's when she spoke those words, "You can wait outside." As I stood there, absorbing the casual cruelty of her dismissal and Jade's smirking face, 3 years of accumulated slights crystallized into perfect clarity. I knew exactly what I needed to do. The moment I sent that email, containing our resignation letters, client transfer notifications, patent applications, and the press release scheduled for the following morning, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. As notification sounds chimed throughout the room, I walked away without looking back. I had only reached the parking garage when my phone began ringing. The CEO's name flashed on my screen. I declined the call, Then came texts from Marcus. Then Sandra from HR. I ignored them all. If you're still with me, thank you for your patience. The journey I've shared so far is one many of you might recognize. The frustration of having your contributions overlooked, your ideas stolen, your potential dismissed. If this resonates with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to hear stories of others who found their power in unexpected ways. Because what happened next wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine while creating something even better. As I walked to my car, I felt my phone vibrating continuously in my pocket. I finally pulled it out to see 7 missed calls from the CEO, 3 from Marcus, and a flurry of increasingly desperate text messages. The most revealing came from Jadida. Whatever they're offering you, we'll double it. Come back inside now. That's when I knew they'd finally read what I sent. Comprehensive documentation of how my stolen algorithm had been fundamental to the company's recent success, along with proof that their version, the one they'd given Jade credit for, was merely a shadow of my complete innovation. I was unlocking my car when I heard rapid footsteps behind me. I turned to find Roland, our vice president, breathing heavily after chasing me down 3 flights of stairs. "Cassie, wait," he gasped, his usually impeccable appearance now disheveled. "You can't just leave like this. The company needs you." I regarded him quietly. Interesting. An hour ago, I wasn't even worth a seat at the ceremony. "That was a misunderstanding," he said, straightening his tie. "A clerical error." Was it also a clerical error when my name was removed from the quarterly reports? Or when Jade presented my work as her own? Or when I was passed over for promotion 3 times while watching others advance using my innovations? Roland's expression tightened. Business is complicated. Individual contributions often get absorbed into larger initiatives. "Yes, I've noticed whose contributions get absorbed and whose get celebrated," I replied. "But that's no longer my concern. The clients you've contacted are bound by exclusivity agreements. They can't simply switch to your startup." I smiled for the first time that day. "You might want to review those agreements again. The language restricts them from working with your competitors. But since my solution operates on an entirely different framework, one I developed independently on my own time, it creates a new category. Your legal team confirmed this when they reviewed the original concept 6 months ago and determined it wasn't worth pursuing." Roland's face paled. "What do you want, a promotion? Equity? Name it." What I wanted was recognition for my work, respect for my contributions, a seat at the table I helped build. I opened my car door. "But you've shown me something more valuable, that I don't need your table. I can build my own." As I drove away, I watched in my rearview mirror as more company executives poured into the parking garage, their awards ceremony completely forgotten. My phone continued buzzing with notifications. I pulled over briefly to silence it, but not before seeing a message from Priya. "It's done. We're all out. Meeting you at the new office." The new office was a converted industrial space I'd leased under a holding company name 3 weeks earlier. When I arrived, my team was already there. Priya, Dante, and 5 other colleagues who had suffered similar experiences at our former employer. Each had submitted their resignations simultaneously with mine, creating a talent exodus the company couldn't possibly recover from quickly. "Did they try to stop you?" asked Claire, our operations specialist who had been repeatedly overlooked despite generating our former employer's most profitable client relationships. "Roland chased me to the parking garage," I replied, "offered me anything I wanted." "Bet that felt good," Dante said, handing me a cup of coffee from the machine we'd installed the previous weekend. "Not as good as this will," I said, opening my laptop to show them the response I'd received from our first major client. They had not only agreed to transfer their business to us, but had introduced us to 2 additional prospects impressed by our innovative approach. Over the next several hours, we finalized our launch strategy. Our company, Vantage Core, would officially announce its existence the following morning with our proprietary logistics framework as its flagship offering. The patents I'd filed would protect our intellectual property, and the client agreements we'd secured would give us immediate revenue. At 7:30 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it until Priya glanced at the screen. "That's the board chairman's private line," she said quietly. I answered, putting it on speaker so my team could hear. "Ms. Vance," came the gravelly voice of Gerald Holt, the rarely seen chairman of my former company's board. "I believe we need to talk." "I'm listening," I replied. "I've spent the afternoon reviewing the situation. The documentation you provided is concerning. I'd like to meet with you privately to discuss a resolution." "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Holt, but there's nothing to resolve. My decision is final. Perhaps I haven't made myself clear." His tone hardened. "Our company has resources you cannot imagine. If you proceed with this venture of yours, we will be forced to take measures to protect our interests." "Are you threatening me?" I asked calmly. I'm outlining consequences, he replied. Legal action for breach of confidentiality. Claims against your patents. We can ensure your startup never gets off the ground. I signaled to Dante, who began recording the call. Mr. Holt, everything I've done is legal and documented. The innovations I'm taking forward were created on my personal time, using my personal resources. Your own legal team confirmed they were distinct from company property. As for confidentiality, I've disclosed no proprietary information. I've simply informed clients that I'm starting a new business and invited them to consider our services. Clients who are contractually obligated to us, he countered. Clients whose contracts include performance clauses that you've repeatedly failed to meet. I didn't need to persuade them to leave. I simply offered them a better option when they were already looking elsewhere. The line went silent for a moment. What would it take to bring you back? He finally asked, his voice noticeably softer. Name your terms. I looked around at my team, talented professionals who had been undervalued, overlooked, and exploited. People who had trusted me enough to take this leap together. There are no terms, Mr. Holt. This isn't a negotiation tactic. It's a new beginning. After ending the call, we spent hours preparing for the media response we anticipated following our announcement. By midnight, exhausted but exhilarated, we gathered around the conference table we'd assembled ourselves the previous weekend. To Vantage Core, Priya said, raising a paper cup of vending machine coffee, and to Cassie, who showed us all what's possible when you refuse to stay where you're not valued. It's not just about me, I insisted. Every person in this room made this possible. We're building something together that none of us could create alone. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in years, despite the uncertainty ahead. The next morning, our press release went out at exactly 8 a.m., just as the trading day began. By 8:15, financial news sites were reporting on the sudden emergence of a disruptive new player in the logistics sector. By 9, they were reporting on the subsequent drop in my former employer's stock price. At 9:30, we gathered around a screen to watch our former CEO give an emergency press conference. His usual confidence was nowhere to be seen as he attempted to reassure investors that the departure of a few employees would not impact operations. The market disagreed. The stock dropped another 7% during his 17-minute speech. When he announced that Marcus would be stepping down to pursue other opportunities, I felt no satisfaction, only confirmation that the company would continue its pattern of scapegoating individuals rather than addressing its toxic culture. By noon, our phones were ringing constantly with calls from potential clients, investors, and even former colleagues interested in joining us. The industry had taken notice, and our calendar quickly filled with meetings. What my former employer had failed to understand